Everyone thinks they know Florida, Disney World, South Beach, the Keys, and some beach where you will never afford the condo. But there is an entire other state sitting just underneath the surface. Nuclear missiles hidden in the Everglades. An abandoned Disney water park where the closing music played on loop for 17 years to nobody. A launch pad where 3 astronauts died in under 30 seconds, fenced off behind a military base that most Americans do not know exists. And a town that was burned to the ground by a white mob in 1923 and stayed buried for 60 years. I found 12 places in Florida that Google Maps is not going to help you with. Some are behind military fences. Some are under a recreational lake. Some are standing right next to the highway you have already driven. Let's go. Number 12. Sunland Hospital, Orlando. There is a children's playground now on the site of Sunland Hospital. Swings, slides, and a play structure. After-school kids have no idea what happened on the same ground. Sunland started as a tuberculosis hospital in the 1950s. When antibiotics made tuberculosis wards obsolete, the state converted it into an institution for children and adults with developmental disabilities. Over 100 child patients died in the 1970s alone. Many were buried in unmarked graves in the woods behind the building. Some of those graves are in a section of nearby Greenwood Cemetery still officially labeled Babyland. The state investigated repeatedly. The facility kept operating. It finally closed in 1983, after conditions that inspectors described in language that still makes uncomfortable reading. The main building was demolished in 1999. The playground went in. The swings move sometimes when there is no wind. Nobody who lives nearby finds that surprising. Number 11. Rosewood, Levy County. Rosewood is not a ghost town in the usual sense. Ghost towns empty out gradually because of economics, drought, or the railroad going somewhere else. Rosewood emptied in a week because a white mob burned it down. January 1923. A white woman in nearby Sumner claimed a black man had attacked her. Evidence suggests the actual attacker was a white man she was having an affair with, and she lied to protect herself. It did not matter. A mob formed. Over the following week, white men from surrounding towns rode into Rosewood, hunted black residents through the swamps, and burned every structure to the ground. Official death toll was 6 black residents and 2 white men killed in self-defense. Eyewitnesses put the real number somewhere between 27 and 150. No arrests, no charges. The survivors scattered, took new identities, and did not speak about it for decades. The story disappeared from Florida history for 60 years. In 1994, Florida passed a bill compensating survivors and their descendants, the first time any U.S. state had done this for victims of racial violence. The site was designated a Florida Heritage Landmark in 2004. What remains today is the house of John Wright, a white general store owner who hid black women and children in his home during the massacre and helped organize their evacuation by train. Everything the community itself built is gone. A highway runs past the marker. Most people driving to Cedar Key do not stop. Number 10. Disney's River Country, Bay Lake. Disney's first water park sat abandoned on the shore of Bay Lake for 17 years, less than a mile from the Magic Kingdom. The closing theme music played on a loop to nobody. River Country opened in 1976. Rope swings, water slides, a filtered lake, the whole rustic swimming hole thing. It was popular for decades. Then September 11th happened. Tourism collapsed, and Disney quietly closed River Country in November 2001 for what they called a seasonal refurbishment. They never reopened it. In 2005, Disney officially announced the closure was permanent. For the next 17 years, the park sat exactly as it had been left. Slides in place, concrete sun decks cracking, Florida vegetation taking the beach back. At the speed Florida vegetation always wins. Disney never cut the power, so the lights kept cycling on and off automatically. And the River Country closing theme kept playing over the empty public address system, day after day. year after year, to nobody. Urban explorers who got over the fence found it frozen in time. The same music, the same empty towel hooks, the same rusted slides. Disney's stated consequence for getting caught was a lifetime ban from all Disney properties. It didn't stop people. Demolition finally started in 2019. The site is a hotel construction zone now. You can still see the old shoreline from the Bay Lake Ferry if you know where to look. There's nothing there. That is somehow worse than the ruins. In the heart of the Florida Everglades, surrounded by sawgrass and alligators, there is a nuclear missile base. For the first 20 years of its existence, nobody in Florida knew it was there. After the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the Army built a ring of Nike Hercules missile installations around Miami. HM-69 Alpha Battery was the westernmost, placed deep inside what would become Everglades National Park. Up to 150 soldiers were on duty around the clock. There were 18 missiles, some nuclear-armed, pointed south toward Cuba. 5 radar towers, a large pink administrative building, whose color has never been satisfactorily explained. The base was decommissioned in 1979. Because it sat inside a national park, nobody demolished it. Murals that soldiers had painted on the walls were still there. The original warning signs remained mounted, reading, U.S. Army Restricted Area. Use of deadly force is authorized. In 2008, the National Park Service opened it for guided tours. You can walk through all 22 buildings today, stand in the control room where radar operators tracked incoming aircraft from Cuba. See the assembly barn where nuclear warheads were prepared. The administrative building is still pink. That detail has never been explained. Number 8. Launch Complex 34, Cape Canaveral. Launch Complex 34 is officially designated abandoned in place. That is the military term for too significant to demolish, not practical to fully maintain. So we are just leaving it. 3 astronauts died here. January 27, 1967. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were running a routine pre-launch rehearsal inside Apollo 1 when a fire broke out in the command module. The cockpit was packed with flammable materials in a pure oxygen environment, design choices that multiple engineers had already raised concerns about. The hatch opened inward. Internal pressure made it impossible to open quickly. All 3 men were dead in under 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds total. The pad was decommissioned the following year. The towers were demolished. What remained, the launch ring, the flame deflectors, and the blockhouse, was designated a memorial and left exactly where it stood. Today, a concrete launch ring sits in the middle of an empty pad. The blockhouse, designed to survive a rocket explosion at 300 meters, still has the original equipment panels inside. The plaque at the pad reads, Ad Astra per Aspera, to the stars through difficulty. The site is inside an active military installation. You can only visit on authorized tours. On most days, there is no one there. 3 names on a plaque in the Florida heat, on a pad where nothing launches anymore. Number 7. Yellow Water Nuclear Weapons Storage, Jacksonville. For 40 years, Jacksonville residents drove within a few miles of 89 concrete bunkers containing nuclear weapons. The U.S. government never told them. Yellow Water was established at Naval Air Station Cecil Field in 1959. There were 89 ammunition bunkers with concrete walls 3 feet thick and steel blast doors weighing tons. Each bunker held between 10 and 30 nuclear weapons, primarily nuclear depth bombs for use against Soviet submarines in the Atlantic. 3 rows of barbed wire, motion sensors, searchlights, 200 Marines on rotating patrol. Security systems included, according to declassified records, toxic gases and sonic devices capable of destroying a person's eardrums. Security remained intense, the secret held until 1985, when 2 researchers published a book identifying the site. The U.S. Navy declined to confirm or deny. Nuclear weapons convoys started moving through downtown Jacksonville. Residents who had been living a few miles from a nuclear arsenal for 26 years were not thrilled. The last weapons left in 1993. The facility was stripped and closed. Most of the site has since been redeveloped. The 89 bunkers, blast-hardened with 3-foot walls and built to contain city-destroying weapons, are still there, gradually being absorbed into a mixed-use development. Some are now storage units. The blast doors are still in the walls. Bunkers remain visible. Number 6. Discovery Island, Bay Lake. Same lake as River Country, different island. Even more sealed off for even longer, and Disney has never once publicly acknowledged it. Discovery Island operated as a zoological park from 1974 to 1999. Disney closed it without explanation, relocated the animals, put up a fence, and stopped letting anyone on. Unlike River Country, there was no announcement, no reason given, just closed. What was left was a 5-acre tropical island with functioning park infrastructure, a bird show stage, directional signs, a walk-in aviary, and the kind of vegetation that happens when Florida gets a decade to work uninterrupted. Concrete paths cracked by roots, animal habitats reclaimed, all of it in the middle of Bay Lake. 5 minutes by boat from the Magic Kingdom. Urban explorers have gotten on. Their photos show exactly what you would expect, a theme park that nature had years to redecorate. Disney's stated policy on getting caught is a lifetime ban from all Disney properties. As of the most recent reporting, Discovery Island remains closed, fenced, and officially unacknowledged by Disney. You can see it from the lake ferry. They will not tell you what it is. Number 5. The abandoned launch complexes at Cape Canaveral. Launch Complex 34 is the famous one, but it is surrounded by a graveyard of other abandoned pads that most people drive past without knowing they exist. Launch Complex 36 sent Surveyor, Mariner, and Pioneer missions to the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. The mobile service towers were imploded in 2007. The blockhouse is still standing in the Palmetto Scrub. Launch Complex 13 hosted over 50 Atlas rocket launches in the 1950s and 60s. Those missiles, depending on the order they were given, were either going to deliver nuclear warheads to the Soviet Union or loft the first American satellites into orbit. Its gantry still stands. The original instrumentation is still in the blockhouse. Launch Complex 19 was Gemini. When photographer Roland Miller visited it in 1988, the light bulbs were still intact 22 years after the last launch. The erector arm that raised the rockets vertical before each mission was still lying horizontal on the pad, left exactly where the crew had put it after the final Gemini flight in 1966. Nobody had touched it, abandoned in place. No maintenance. Let it age. Half of the launch complexes Miller documented over 25 years of photography are already gone. The ones still standing are going. A launch complex takes decades to build and can disappear in an afternoon. These ones changed the world and are behind a military fence in a Florida marsh, rusting at the rate Florida rusts everything. Number 4. CIA Station JMWAVE, Miami. In the early 1960s, the CIA's largest station outside its own headquarters was not in Berlin or Moscow. It was in Miami, Florida, on a university campus, operating as a company called Zenith Technical Enterprises Incorporated. JMWAVE housed 300 to 400 CIA operatives and employed an estimated 15,000 Cuban exiles as informants, saboteurs, and fighters. It spawned around 300 front companies across South Florida, boat shops, car dealerships, law firms, all serving as cover for anti-Castro operations. The CIA was one of Miami's largest employers during this period. Nobody was allowed to say so. The operations coordinated from JMWAVE included raids on Cuban infrastructure, multiple assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, and activities that, according to the Church Committee in 1975, directly contributed to the Soviet decision to place missiles in Cuba. That then triggered the Cuban Missile Crisis. and that then required the Nike missile bases in the Everglades. The station closed in 1975. The front companies dissolved. The safe houses were sold. The University of Miami South campus sits on that land now. No plaque, no acknowledgement. Students work in the buildings every day. Number 3. The acreage, Palm Beach County. In the 1980s and the 1990s, families in the acreage, an unincorporated suburb west of West Palm Beach, started losing children to brain cancer. Not one or two. A cluster, a pediatric brain cancer rate that state health officials described as significantly above normal. Investigators pointed to Pratt & Whitney's jet engine testing facilities nearby, which had used trichloroethylene and other industrial solvents for decades. The chemicals migrated through sandy Florida soil into the groundwater. The company disputed the connection, and the state found insufficient evidence to establish causation definitively. Lawsuits were filed and settled under non-disclosure agreements, which meant the families who lost children could not tell anyone what the settlements were for. The acreage is not abandoned. People still live there. The monitoring wells are still sampling the groundwater. The lawns are green, the sprinklers run, and the whole thing looks like any other Florida suburb. That's the point. You cannot see what's in the water from the road. Number 2. Rosewood's neighbors, Florida's other erased communities. Rosewood gets the recognition now, but it was not the only black community in Florida that disappeared under circumstances the state spent decades not examining. Ocoee, 1920. On Election Day, a black man named July Perry tried to vote. A white mob burned the black quarter of town to the ground. Between 30 and 60 people were killed. The black population of Ocoee was effectively driven out permanently. The town remained almost entirely white for decades afterward. Perry, Florida, 1922. Charles Wright, a black man accused of murdering a white woman, was lynched. Then, the black community was systematically driven out of town over the following months. Their churches and homes burned. These towns still exist. The events are in the historical record. Most state historical markers are recent. Most roads through these towns do not mention what happened on them. Florida processed its tourism infrastructure before it processed its history, and in some places it is still catching up. Number 1. The airfield underneath Disney World. Before Disney World was Disney World, there was an orange grove, a couple of small towns, and a World War II military training airfield called the Otter Creek Army Airfield. In the late 1960s, Disney's representatives began buying up Central Florida scrubland through dozens of shell companies, carefully designed so no single seller would understand what was being assembled. When the full picture of what Disney had purchased emerged, it was roughly 40 square miles of Central Florida, larger than San Francisco, acquired almost entirely in secret. The Otter Creek Airfield was among the parcels absorbed. When construction began on what would become Walt Disney World, it was built on top of the airfield. The runways were buried under fill, construction, and 40 years of resort infrastructure. Ground-penetrating surveys have confirmed the original runway geometry is still preserved under the topsoil near the Magic Kingdom's service corridors. Disney has built one of the most visited places on Earth on top of a ghost military base. The utility tunnels run roughly parallel to former taxiways. The entertainment complex that gets 13 million visitors a year was constructed on the ruins of a facility whose pilots are buried in veterans' cemeteries and whose existence nobody at the Magic Kingdom thinks about for a single second. Florida does not hide things on purpose. It just builds over them, plants sod, posts a sign with different information, and trusts the sunshine to handle the rest.